Hi guys, I'm live with Candace Craw Goldman.
Surprise!
Yeah, surprise! I asked both of them at the same time if they wanted to join me today because it appears that all three of us are getting message, and Dolores reached out to all three of us, and we didn't know exactly what was going to happen. But I've been getting some information. I'm sure Priscilla's been getting some information, and I know Candace has. So it just felt interesting that we all have these synchronicities simultaneously. Today happens to be her birthday. And Candace and I are notorious for like having synchronicities like at the same time, like really information coming in that's very similar. And I haven't read Candace's recent information. I know nothing of it. So I want her to share what she's getting. I'm going to share what I'm getting. And then I'm going to go to sleep and we're going to have an interesting time. And Candace, if you get any information from her too, you're welcome to bring it through at that time. Priscilla was meant to be here, but she's having some technical issues. So she is here watching us and holding space for us today. So what are you getting, Candace?
Let me thank Priscilla, by the way, for all of her support and for being there for us both. Well, so for those of you who don't know, quantumhealers.com has been celebrating Worldwide Regression Week all week long. And we started 2 years ago. We called it Worldwide Regression Day, April 15th. Today is Dolores' birthday. And I just thought, what a great way to change the meaning of April 15th, which is typically income tax day here in America, except for this year, apparently. And we made an event of it. And this year, it's a whole week long. And yesterday I woke up with an absolute download of a message. And then I just sat down and kind of recreated the conversation that came in an instant download. And Dolores was talking about this idea of what was going on with people and what they were thinking and what they were experiencing. And you all can look at this on my wall, or I even posted it to my community page on the Quantum Healers YouTube site. But what she was talking about was that we're in this time right now that is really messy. And what she was kind of chiding us, and she was saying, you people, you humans, you think that you want to go outside and you want to go from lockdown, she said, to go outside and finding utopia. And she said, it's not going to work that way. And she also said, this is why you don't even want that. You don't want that. She said, it would be a shock. If you have this idea of what the new earth is, all these bright colors, all this peace, all this, everything's perfect. Nobody has a job. Nobody eats meat. She used an example of the lion and the lamb. She said, where the lion and the lamb this is what she actually said. The lion and the lamb are having lunch, and the lamb is not the lion's lunch. And it just cracked me up. She had me laughing through the whole thing. And then she said, if you'd go out onto your porch and they would be eating peanut butter sandwiches, can you just imagine? She said, it actually would be a shock to your system. And she, of course, was meaning humor. But she was saying, you can't go from where we are this moment to a utopia, this preconceived idea that people have out there of what the new earth is. You can't do that with a light switch moment. And she said, even if you could, she said, you wouldn't be able to handle it. She said, it would be such a shock. She said, people think that shocks are traumatic, like car accidents or, something violent and bad. She said, even if it was exactly what you always wanted, it would be such a shock to your system, you wouldn't be able to handle it. You cannot go from where we are today to that in an instant. And she said a couple other things. She said, this is the messy part. She said, this is the important part. This is the part where everything's muddy and it's hard to see what's going on. And then she said this. She said, it's got to happen in this way so that you can see the changes, you can appreciate the changes, you can welcome the changes in this smaller way, so that when you create the newer world that you want, you have the wisdom and clarity to keep it that way without going backwards.
Wow.
It was really incredibly beautiful and funny. She was very funny.
She always is.
She used the term hunky dory in there. And I mean, I'm like, I'm just laughing. I'm like, Dolores, and she's like, why are you laughing? I'm like, who says hunky dory anymore? I said, I bet there's people in the world don't even know what hunky dory means.
Oh, I do.
She cracked me up, but she was beautiful. And she basically said, it's time to write your own story, which was also very Dolores. She says, it's time for you to write it. She said, look, there are people waiting right out there, right next to you, who'd be happy to write your story for you. Is that what you want? You want them to write your story? No? Well, then you go write your story.
I love that, because the similar message that I got this morning was, she goes, humans want it all. And she did her hands like this, and humans want it now. She said, so you can't go from kindergarten to grad school. Yep. And some of you are in kindergarten, some of you are already in grad school. And she looked at me and she goes, and you're impatient with the kindergartners. And I was like, oh. She pointed me out, called me out. And then she said, and then there's those of you who are in between, and each of you have beautiful roles in your stories, and you're helping each other graduate. She said, and kindergartners, keep in mind, this isn't boot camp. And those of you who have already graduated and you're here to help. And she looked at me and kind of went like this. And I'm like, it wasn't a fun conversation. She said, you will need more tolerance. You will need better languaging. You will need a lot of patience, and she said, and remember, you signed up. So it was very calming. She said, but you want it all and you want it now. And that's not the way it works. In this, she said, you are a convoluted species right now, and you always have been, but now is a time of mastery. And we just went on. It just went on. Go on. What else did she say to you about that?
Pamela, I need to, oh, there you are. Oh. Your video was off for a minute, and I didn't know if I was doing something, but it came back just now. Well, she said that she says, you're right in the thick of it. You're right in the middle of it. And this is where the important things are happening. And this is where it is all chaotic like this, but it's in the chaos where the creation happens. You have the ability. This is the part we've all been waiting for. And what my sense was is, everyone's like, I don't want to anymore. I want the thing, I want the thing that I've been waiting for all this time. And we've been working on it. We've been working our way up to it. And now there's this, my sense is, though, this isn't the end of the crescendo, right? At all. As a matter of fact, it's going to get even bigger.
Yes.
So people are going to have to, and that's why we get together like this. And that's why we talk about this. And that's why we connect like this. And things are going to get kind of muddier, shall we say, before they're going to get clearer.
Yeah. There's some chaos. There's some uprising in order for us to balance out, a lot of these cycles. Is what she says. We're going through these cycles, and it's very interesting. Has she ever talked to you about something that worked for the ancient elders of our planet a long time ago called the limited law of competition?
No, this is your department. These kind of specifics and reaching back into, Dolores and I don't know. And sometimes I think I'm only able to really capture and really listen to her when she's kind of talking to me first. You know what I mean? And then I'm able to make it a bigger message for all. This is this is totally your department. So no.
We'll get there. I just wanted
to hear what she has to say to you about that.
Yeah. And I'll get there. I just want to know more about what she said. Is there anything else that I'm missing?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to pull it up here and see, but that was particularly it. I think, she says it's about our expectations, that we need to just open up to see how it's going to work like that. She told us about a perspective. She said, from some perspectives, it does seem like it's going to happen really quickly, but not from our perspective, because our perspective is very 3D and time focused right now. And she also used a new term, though. I loved it. She said, she talked about, imagine you're looking at the earth from outer space. And then she said, an outer time. And then it got me laughing again. I'm like, did you just say outer time? She said, yeah, because it makes sense, right? Outer time. And she says it saves time. If you're in outer space and outer time, it's an instant way of looking down and being an observer. And she was talking a lot, she was encouraging that, to remember that perspective, the observer perspective of being in outer space and out of time. And yeah, she said, we're right in the smack dab. She used another term in there, smack dab, smack dab in the middle of the Great Awakening. And she says, it's going to be messy. It's going to be confusing. Everything's going to be stirred up, and it's really hard right now. And then we went on to the other things. And she talked about the stories. Oh, she said, once again, and she always does this, get outside, get away from other people's information streams, get off the computer, even though, of course, you're on right now listening to us, but get outside as much as possible. And she says, put yourself in the sunlight and fresh air. She said, even if you have to hang out of a window. She said, and then she said, stand your ground, make your own decisions, especially when it comes to your bodies. Open your eyes to what's happening around you with compassion, curiosity, and a positive attitude. Be nice to one another inside and out. Forgive each other, even the ones who commit the most heinous offenses. And that's because you don't want to get into the, we're righteous and you're wrong. And you don't want to get into that mindset, really. You want to, you want to compassion and everything, right? You have to remember we've all decided to play roles in this game. And once she kind of ends it by saying, you have to see the mess before you can clean up your mess. And she says, I'm talking about your individual messes, the collective mess. And she says, yes, this seems agonizingly slow for those of you who've been awake, but nobody's going to swoop in and clean it up for you. It's up to you. She's like, big pointed finger stuff. It's up to you. You have to
do that about my dishes this morning too. So,
She talked about what?
You just told me that about my dishes this morning. Nobody's going to clean up it for you.
Look, she's using the same phrase. I love it. She says, it's up to us, it's up to each one of us. And that really is it. That's all that I got from her.
I love it. Thank you for sharing. I really like the part about the roles, because she woke me up in the middle of the night with this interesting dream about a Chinese water dragon. And then she was like, those things are moving a certain way and you don't pay attention to the tail. And then there's this backlash that's like, and I'm like, what is that? And she's like, oh, that's the karmic flicker. That can cause cosmic hell on your universe. So much chaos, she said. And she did like this, so much chaos. And I'm like, oh, so what is that? And she said, paying attention to everything that's bad in a way that you think that you didn't create it.
That. Yeah.
So that was one analogy. And then the other analogy, I went back to sleep. I had a pretty restless night. She kept waking up. And it's like sometimes I felt like I was asleep and sometimes I didn't. And I was just really restless. And I'd get up and go to the bathroom and I'm going back to sleep. And she's like, good, I'll meet you in there. I'm like, so then I went to sleep again. And then I had a dream about the actual, I don't know what they call this. Someone will know. Maybe my friend Gina will. About the there's a certain time of the year, where you see the costume of the Chinese dragon, the real colorful one, where there are people inside of it, normally multiple people. And she said, so you're playing multiple roles. And it doesn't matter which one's in the front and which one's at the back. and which one's in the middle. If one of them don't play their role, you don't see the beauty of this undulating energy that is working together, and you can only see it when you're not, really looking at the front side or the back side of karma, the positive side or the negative side, the beginning or the end, but you're focusing on the power of how things work together.
I think it's the Chinese New Year. I mean, I may be wrong, but if it's the Chinese New Year, which is really interesting because the whole virus narrative actually has some of the Chinese New Year in the linear part of the time. It was like to do that because they would travel then. That's their big travel day of the entire year. So that's another really interesting. And I had a dream of helping a Chinese man across a street, but the street was filling up with water. And I was trying to help him to get home because he was kind of lost, this Chinese man. And I'm helping him and I'm trying to hold on to him and he slips under the water. I don't know. I just had to say that since you talked about the Chinese water dragon. That's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting, like 2 different dreams about the dragon. And then we went through, and you guys can ask me questions about this when I go into trance, but we talked about the universal creation in terms of how all universes are created. And she said you have archetypes, you have types of beings, not just types of humans, types of beings. So what I wanted to go through today, and you guys can feel free to ask me questions once I dodge out into trance. She said, we used to live, and this is a common message. I also get this one from Halal. She said, we used to live in a way that was at peace and in natural balance with all types of beings and all archetypes of those types of beings. And it was in the ecosystem of our entire universe, we all work together. And there are periods of time when other beings, and we just had these periods of time. She said Zecharia Sitchin talked about it, where within those periods of time, in his book, Genesis Revisited, where, they found some ancient tablets from ancient civilizations where they talked about how these beings would come in and try to pull this power mongering, and it never works. And she wanted to remind us that it never works. And you can, just follow prehistory, not just history, but prehistory and ancient civilization understandings from galactic historians as well to get that information all the way down to Edgar Cayce. So you can get that information, not just through me, but through my channelings of Edgar Cayce and through his entire library of works about ancient civilizations, through Zecharia Sitchin. This has been proven time and time again that theory that we're going to be in power under a massive other type of civilization or extraterrestrial race that embodies it doesn't hold. It will eventually stop. What's up?
Hours since 12.
It has. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That means Bria can play.
That's right. We shut my door for me, love? We have homeschooling going on here.
Oh, of course you do.
Yeah. So basically, she talked about the types of people and what their roles are. And she said they all operated in something called the law of limited competition. And she wanted me to discuss what that means. And she said, that is balance on your planet that you are beginning to return to slowly, which was really exciting. And I wrote it down. I've got like notes about this that I've been writing all day for you guys. So the law of limited competition. She said you can find this in the plants and animals and animals who eat plants and humans who eat plants and everybody who eats and drinks, which is everybody. She thinks aliens think you're ridiculous that you still eat and drink and breathe, but okay. She said, so since we're still there, let's talk about the law of limited competition, which you're returning to now because it worked in ancient civilizations that are now parallel in your worlds. It's not the past. It's parallel in your worlds. See, I, as a kind of a researcher, I research and report back to her, right? She's kind of in that space of the reporter, and I just kind of gather information and go, here, have fun with that. So she brought me through these lands where she told me and she said, so you wait.
I don't know what you said. Maybe you only clicked for me, but you bleaked out. What did you
Yeah,
do?
I'm so sorry. I'm a little ungrounded because I've had channeling after channeling for 3 days straight. So I'm going to have to tone it. She said, tone it down like this. So she brought me to the first stages of Earth last night, and we went through the entirety of Earth's history, one thing behind the other. And she goes, look how peaceful it was. Law of limited competition. You had roles, you had different types of species. You didn't need to go into power over, power under. That didn't need to happen. You didn't need to go into the cultures that you have now that are very conditioned. You didn't need to do all that. I mean, she just says all that you call, a sick culture, Pamela. It's just all that. It didn't need to happen because you operated under the limited law of competition. And that is when the law of your entire land is that you can compete with others naturally and fairly and in a balanced way for food, for water, but not for power. You can't compete with anybody for power. So what does that mean? That means that everybody has fair use of all elemental resources on our lands, our skies, our earth and the food that grows therefrom, the waters, and everything that we need for survival. And then it goes out into, she said, you create various little divisions of this, like when you're in roles for politics, when you're in roles in relationships, you create various divisions of this same thing. And then what you're doing is taking each other's food and putting it under control, taking each other's water, and putting it under someone else's control. And then she said, you guys are so willing to just give up that power or fight to get it back. Both of those theories are keeping you kind of stuck somewhere between kindergarten and mastery in your roles of awakening. So she went through all these roles. And Candace, you probably heard these roles before. She talked about the planters. She said that they seed Earth, from various sources that, as we are aware, are extraterrestrial. And she said they're involved with the introduction of cells on the planet. They seed your planet. They are you. It's not a they that's trying to hurt you. It's you. So basically, you had kind of a nitrogen-based, when I first saw the vision, it was a nitrogen-based planet with volcanoes everywhere and just non-fertile soil. They were erupting and animals couldn't even walk on this land, much less breathe on it. So they had to create oxygen, these planters, and they had to then begin to create water, and they had to then begin to create plants, and then eventually humans and animals simultaneously, not one before the other.
She's like screaming in my ear. That's why I called it Keepers of the Garden. So one of her very famous books is called Keepers of the Garden. And that's exactly why.
Yeah, that's exactly why. So we began to keep this garden that we planted, and this is our garden. And she talked about the planters, and she said, you are transmitters. I'm just aching to tell you this. Can you tell me? Because Candace and I just posted this big thing about transmitters and transducers. So she told us that planters and seeders are transmitters of genetic information, both etheric and physiological. Mm-hmm. And you are thought leaders, is what she called you.
So many wonderful terms. What a wonderful.
Yeah. So then she went on to, she said, now there are recorders. They record information and report it back. Recorders and reporters work together. So I'm a recorder and she's a reporter. And this is just what we do, right? And she said, so they recorded at that time what was growing and what was not, what was working and what was not. And they balanced that out for you just by giving information, taking information, recording information, and giving information. To who? The high councils of you. She said, all of it's you. You just can't perceive that right now. But you are recorders and reporters. You are transducers. Yeah. And then she went on to say, then, this is an interesting term, there are containers. I'm like, huh? She's like, containers of information. I don't know what you call yourselves, but you hold information. And she said, you are transmuters. And you are here to balance everything that the planters and seeders and recorders and reporters do together.
I hope hope somebody's writing all this down. I should be writing this down. I'm going to grab my, if I can keep up with you. This is crazy.
I wrote it all down in my scribble handwriting. I'll just send you a screenshot.
Oh, would you? I'd love it.
Yeah, and she said, look, you lived peaceably, not for thousands of years, but for millions of years. Just because you broke this one natural law, all you have to do is get back to it. It's just a natural law that you created.
Wow.
So when you observe that in every single thing you do, every single ways that you go off and branch off into that, whether it's food and water and relationships and politics and religions and every conditioned thing you have in culture, she said, when you are following the law of limited competition, you're going to be at peace with each other. And this is going to go back to ancient technologies of light and sound that you used to use from a long time ago. And she showed me those technologies, and you can ask all kind of questions about them today.
Wow. So this is sounding to me like control structures are the thing that can't survive in a place where you are observing the law of limited competition. So no wonder so many of us are resisting being controlled. It's like enough control. Wow. So back to light and sound technology. Now, is this light and sound technology going to need actual equipment? Oh, wait, I don't need to ask that now. I'll wait. I'll wait till we get to the questions. You know, before you even go into trance and before I forget, are you wanting to keep this at any particular time? Because, you know, we're coming up on half an hour already in your show.
It's up to your schedule. I don't want to go more than an hour from now, but if you need to depart anytime before then, just wake me up and we'll do so.
That sounds about right. An hour and a half's about all I got today. So, so that's perfect. Maybe before we get going, can we do a quick potty break?
I need to do that too, because I've been drinking a smoothie over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, do you want to get into it right now, or
let's do the break now? Let's let all of us get some water, and then we'll come right back.
Perfect.
Okay. Hey. I'm working on it. Hey, wait a minute. That's not right. I'm working on it.
You'll get it.
Yeah.
Your video is off, but I think your audio is fine. I don't know what. There you go.
Thanks. Okay. I'm going to go to sleep and let you guys ask questions. Bye.
All right.
Hi, Candy.
Happy birthday, Dolores. I love you.
Did you bring me some white chocolate macadamia nut cookies?
No, but I have cake somewhere. Somewhere there's some cake.
Buttercream?
Always.
Thank you. So I've bugged Pamela enough. Go on and ask your questions.
All right. Happy to do that. Thank you so much. All right. So let's start with this one by Naomi. What are some practical things we can do to change every aspect of our modern lifestyles so they're more in line with our prehistoric and current tribal lifestyle?
Everything you can do. That's one big one. So let's just start from square one and focus on the basics of living. There's a lot that people forget about. In my teachings, when you want to be awake and pretend you're asleep at the same time, how's that working out for you? Awareness is the first step. Just being aware of when your thoughts are perpetually slipping into this chaos. Being aware of that, that's a big deal. It may seem like a simple thing, but many of you today are looking for complicated, complex, convoluted, if you will, theories that will turn your mind into a pretzel. So, for you. You have to be aware of the complicated machinery that is the mind if you want to sit in the driver's seat of it. When is your mind doing this? What returns you to the basics? If you talk about tribal elders, this is the nature of ancient civilization which began your planet. But imagine what you looked like back then. Kind of funny, huh? You wouldn't have even had hands and feet or the same type of head or anything like that, yet you're trying to get back to something. So I want you to be where you are now and understand your role by understanding when your mind gets overcomplicated and it stresses every part of your nature and pushes every part of your buttons so that you would need my technique in the first place. So let's start there, just by a gentle awareness, a basic awareness of when you're getting off track, not from, what you all are calling love and light, but what I can just call sanity, just basic common living, just living a good life. Let's start there. Before we get things too complicated, you have to be able to understand the different components of your mind, because the mind is everything that perpetuates what you're doing in your dreams. And you are now living your dreams consciously. You just don't know it yet. And you want to keep thinking that you're asleep.
Thank you. All right. Aaralyn asks, how can we best align our missions? And whoa, wait a second. Somebody must have asked something, moved it up. There it is. Sorry. How can we best align with our missions and purpose right now? Are we activating DNA within ourselves? If yes, what can we do to facilitate this activation and expansion?
If you look at this and you consider it being so far away from you, it'll be such an unreachable, perplexing experience that you generally just will feel that it's unreachable, untouchable. So DNA is like that. It's this perplexing confounding thing that we're all talking about. What is our physiological DNA? What is our DNA from the star systems? What is this within that? And how do we activate it? Is if I'm going to create a tool like the abacus. By the way, they used to use that for such things. So you want me to create a tool or a system or a modality or a theory or something to make you get back to the basics of your essence. So what do I mean by that? How to understand your own subconscious in a more conscious environment. This is when what you say, walking your walk, talking your talk, in this case, breathing your talk. This is when some of the star systems got that a little bit off track when they said, oh, you guys are silly because you have to breathe. What if that was a portion of that technology that activated the lower levels of your consciousness in a way that would make it be still, and then you can point it like a laser. If the mind is a ship, the ego is a laser, and it simply points it in the right direction. Alan Watts once told me it's a troubleshooter. And if you think you're the troubleshooter, he said, well, then you're in for a world of pain and misery. So stop confusing yourselves. You aren't that portion of your mind, but that is the tool that effectively guides the light from the sound that you breathe. What does that mean? Your language is important. You can command your own language if you understand the complicated tool that is your body, and don't make it so perplexing. Simply understand that every command comes in 3. Go from there and tell the mind what you want it to do. Tell it what you want it to think. Tell it what you want it to feel. And when you gather that, then you can go begin to gather elements and work with things like crop. You can work with things like irrigation systems that are known by the ancient Mayans and all of the extraterrestrial races that those are planters and seeders, by the way. You can do all those things, but you wanted to jump straight there. You can't command the elements if you can't command yourselves.
That's a beautiful answer. Thank you so much. Once again, we want the end without going through the middle. All right, here's the next question. It is by Carol. What ways can we use sound healing, such as tuning forks and binary frequencies that we may not be aware of? She says, thank you.
Okay, so that technology was created by Mayan elders. I guess this land would now be known as, that would be in Iquitos. So when you're looking at that, you think of certain, and it also happened in Egypt. This happened simultaneously throughout various situations and various civilizations. Various timelines happening at once. Wrap your head around it with me for a bit. Don't think about this and then that, or this time frame and then after. It was happening at the same time. If sound came from some of the ancient techniques that first began with light, what would that do? So let's consider the sundial. Let's look at that in Machu Picchu. That's pointing in a certain direction. Then suddenly you're garnering from the power of the sun. Now, those ancient civilizations believed that they had very little to do with the sun, but when they captured the power of the sun and that solar energy, they were instantaneously reminded with their breath that they too were the sun, that they too could harness that from their very cellular nature. And then they became one with the sun. And teachers in modern times call this oneness teachings. However, they began by needing tools to do that. They could actually plant crop very quickly. And then they began to understand that there was a sound. They didn't need a tool for it. There was a sound that occurred between each breath. So if time went from A to B to C to D, what happens in the lapse between? Have you ever listened with a stethoscope? Some of us have. Something that happens between your own heartbeat. There's a silence, but it's not empty. And then when you become still enough within that silence between sound, there's a technology, an ancient technology that many of you have accessed in transcendental meditation techniques. But your elders accessed it simply by being quiet enough to hear the ringing of their ears until they understood what happened between the gaps of sound. This is even the concept of modern day Morse code and communication. There's a sound that happens in that silence. That abyss isn't empty. And that is the key to sound technologies. Now, in those times, you found it very convenient to go bang some metal on a rock and listen to it resonate. You shape-shifted, used fire, used various tools in order to harness that sound. You did so with another element. That element was fire. So these are tools that have been used throughout time. We don't need those actual tools to get there, but you must be quiet enough to understand the power of sound and to capture it. And then to use it with light is another story, but you're going to be learning this for the next several months, not through this channel, but all around the world. You're going to be remembering these technologies. It's exciting.
Thank you so much. So does that have anything to do with the ringing sounds in our ears that we hear and have many of us have heard more and more of as we move deeper into the shift?
That's the start. You understand, many of you go outside these days and you know that Earth is quite quiet. Seems disturbing to some of you. And then to some of you, you understand how full that quiet is. That's the beginning. And if you can imagine that nature could be quiet long enough to hear the own ringing of your ears, the own beating of your hearts, sit with that, listen to that until even that isn't observed by the brain. There's a science to this. Some of you are nowadays calling it heart math. But there's a science to this that your elders and the ancient civilizations knew of. And you'll be remembering this soon as well. But it isn't a tool that I'm going to give you. I'm not going to hook up something to your chest and do it for you. It isn't brainwave technology, although that helps in the assistance of it for the coherence of your mind and all the brain waves. It's what happens. The brain waves and coherence are a result being quiet long enough to hear your own sounds again, and then to utilize that sound with light.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. I hope I'm saying your name right. This is from Roseanne. Where do the Aboriginal people come from originally?
I'm going to have to move her whole body away from the microphone now. Consider the word ab, look up its etymology, original, meaning what? First beings here. So you want me to just label that down to one species, but I can't, because in your universes, this is a galactic library. I can't just say it started in Lemuria. Lemuria was everywhere.
Mhm.
So you have various species. I would venture to say at least 100, with some dominant ones. Of course, Lemurians are a part of that. Of course, Pleiadians are a part of that. Of course, Atlanteans are a part of that. However, there were many, many more that were just starting to understand how to really garner and gather energy and then focus it appropriately so that light and sound as technologies began to ultimately create plants, other types of species, and other types of altered DNA. Now, it wasn't until the power under constructs came about with such chaos and destruction and all of that. You can go channel Zechariah Sitchin for that. And that's some other work that happened at some point in time, but it didn't happen to begin with. That came later. And you must understand that you were at peace for a long time before then, even. Aboriginal beings most specifically refer to Lemurian beings on your planet, but Lemurians were called different things in different portions of your lands. Pangea at that time, Assyria at that time, many things. If you study prehistory, there were various names for what you call Egypt and Asia and various portions of Asia and Mongolia. And I'm just listing lands that you might know of today where Aboriginals began. And they were also in various portions of land that wasn't underwater that now is. So we could keep going about this because you're a root, but there isn't one. You know, what can I call you? Galactic mutts? We can't make one environment out of the many multitudes of beings that you are, because remember, you're that Chinese dragon moving together. Not one more important than the other, not one starting before the other, same time, just different places.
Thank you. All right. Speaking of Lemuria, Kim V asks, what's the difference between Lemuria and Atlantis? Are they from a different timeline? She wants to know if she has had a past life in both of them and what it was like to live in Lemuria and Atlantis.
Well, again, many people have written many storylines about the hundreds of versions of Atlantis and Lemuria that represent this chaos structure that began to be created. So when you began some levels of experiencing that involved feeling that you had to control one's food, control one's experiences in bodies, control the way that you eat, control the way that you breathe, control the way that you live, the way that you are in relationships, the way that you marry, the way that you worship. I can go on, but I won't, because I think you see where I'm coming from here. Lemuria was everywhere. So we can't really answer that question without spending hours of time taking pins and dropping them on the map like pinning the tail on the donkey, but you're all the donkey. You're all Lemurians, you're all Atlanteans, known by various species, and yes to your question for both, but you've all been both.
Thank you. Okay, here's a question from Naomi. Why was the totalitarian agriculture and all that came with it so appealing to us? Was it about convenience and instant gratification in making changes in my own life? I'm finding that those are two things I will have to give up to truly live sustainably. When and why did humans become so lazy and impatient?
What's interesting is that you began to forget that you already had almost instantaneous food. You could grow an entire corn plant from a seed all the way up to the tip top of it like that with appropriate use of sun and all of the elements them for a brainwave and thought. It wasn't something you created. How do you think you got those pyramids up? You didn't use a machine? You know, I don't care what history tells you about that. Isn't it ridiculous what history tells you about that, by the way? So you had that convenience. What you wanted instead was power. It wasn't enough. Someone gave you a small taste of power, and then you liked it. So it certainly wasn't about convenience. That theory won't work. And then the other theories, you know, from your historians to say that perhaps Neolithic man came across totalitarian agriculture because they were starving. That's like saying that someone who's drowning builds a lifeboat while they're drowning. It doesn't happen that way. It's not convenient what you're doing. It creates so much destruction of the planet that you don't know what you're going to do when that happens, because you've forgotten the true convenience of utilizing light and sound technologies. And when you remember that, which is going to happen a little bit at the time, it's not going to be magic through this channeling or through the next. It's going to be small portions of what you can handle with this information in any one sitting that I choose to be with you and that you choose to be with me. So I want you to keep listening and keep just containing your own minds, containing your own bodies, being the containers for energy appropriately, being good stewards of these lands. Start there. But you can't start there without being good stewards of your bodies. You know, some of you want to go out and, for the sake of meditation, let's consider that as a technology, but you're using that to get somewhere other than where you are. So how is that working that you want to get to God? How does God have is there some distance? We're going to get on a spaceship and do that? You're already on spaceships, forgetting that you're on them. So when you're trying to be somewhere that you're not, that concept in any technology is not going to work, because it's just like, you know, when we were all little, we would kind of coerce our mothers and say, you know, I'll just be good. I'll do all the chores if you just give me this piece of candy, and you would be so good. And you do all your chores, you get that piece of candy, and that thrill is gone. So meditation technologies, your practices have been a little bit like that. You're just meditating in order to become meditators. Then what? There's always a then what. So the concept of then what, when it is gone, what do you have? And some of you need to focus on personal hygiene and just understanding what time of the day you're in and remembering your own zip code.
Thank you. You got me giggling on that one, Dolores. Very practical advice. Thank you. Okay, and here is a very familiar question to me. I've heard it so many times. Let's see how you're going to answer it this time. Hello, Dolores. Months ago, I attempted, by the way, Jackie Smith is asking this. Months ago, I attempted to do a QHHT session, but was unsuccessful. Do you know why I wasn't able to do it? Or do you have any advice or guidance for someone that wants to do a QHHT session?
You're not being clear if you were the practitioner or the client. If you're the client, it's one thing. You want to really question whether or not that's successful. And I'd give the same advice to practitioner. What makes you think it's not successful? Let's start there. Just really look at that. Because why do you think that any level of your consciousness isn't going to talk to you? Are you saying that you regressed and nothing happened, no talking occurred? Even then, something happened. Even though you didn't speak it, something must have happened if you're the client. Just because words didn't come from your mouths, words are clumsy. We're working on that. You're about midway there with learning the power of your language, but words are just clumsy substitutions for what could be happening in the powerful nature of your DNA.
In the channeling that I did of Dolores yesterday, she practically screamed the word expectations to me. And she talked about this even when she was alive, about this idea. If you step into these sessions with these defined expectations, sometimes that can get you into trouble. And that's just me helping you out there as a practitioner. All right. Moving on. Here's a message from Rosalie. Is it possible to be of help while staying at home, living a simple, ordinary life, not reaching out to others to offer services online, not trying to put together groups to work on spiritual projects, just plain living in the highest mindset one can manage with regard to every ordinary human being, person, situation, online or TV or live that comes into view? Hi, Rupa.
You would be what I'd call in these archetypes a container. You would be helping to transmute information, gathering it into yourself, and transmuting it for yourself and others. It's not just for others. That's where people kind of get into a funny little place there where they're like, this isn't mine. I'm perfect. I'm just taking it in for everybody else. It's okay. Nope. If you see it, it's yours. Take it in. But recognize and don't fool yourself. If you see it, it's yours. And take it in and transmute it. You don't have to become a teacher, a channel, a speaker, a coach, a facilitator of any sort of healing practice or regression technique to do this. You are practicing how to effectively be the most powerful, complicated, profound type of being that ever existed. Did you know that the extraterrestrials would say that you have to be very brave to do that?
Thank you. Okay, Rachel wants to know, can we as hypnotherapists help in the hospitals with the people that are going through this respiratory virus and easing their symptoms?
You can. There are many roles that you play, many ways to play the game. And if that's the way you want to serve, you're brave, you don't have that fear, and you really thoroughly have examined that you don't have that fear, then go for it.
Excellent. Okay, here we have a really interesting question about entropy. We've been taught to believe, I would need to say who this is by, Harp Maria. We have been taught to believe that eventually everything devolves into entropy and chaos, be it buildings or civilizations. The only way to avoid it is taught to build more, buy more, have more. What's another way to look at entropy and how it could help us envision an exciting way of living?
Well, that's a fun little word that you probably got from some ancient philosopher. Let's look at your wording for the sake of it, because language is powerful in your culture now. You can't unmanifest something. Creation just is and has always been. It can't demanifest. It can't devolve. It can't go away. It just can't. So let's look at what you actually might be trying to say. The have more mentality, again, comes from people going into the law of limited competition and saying that they will break that law. And natural chaos happens. Now, you notice I didn't say unnatural chaos. Natural chaos. Your planet is beginning to reset itself a little bit at a time, and you're seeing this because it's an unstable environment elementally. And that will begin to happen. And when you consider a minimalist lifestyle, taking only what you need and giving only what you can give. There is a balance. Givers don't overly give. Takers don't overly take. You balance the giving. You balance the taking. And what does that mean? Everything that's left operates naturally. But right now, you're not there.
Thank you. Here's an interesting question from Divine Grace. What is the best leading edge question I can ask that will serve my highest vibrational outcome to influence others to also follow their highest vibrational path? And what would be the answer of that question if possible?
Go ahead, Candy. I know you've got this one.
No way do I have this one. I want to know what you're going to say. I'm going to say, I'm not answering that one.
I'm going to turn it around on you a little bit, so just bear with me. Repeat it, please.
Repeat the question. All right. This is such an interesting question. What is the best leading edge question I can ask that will serve my highest vibrational outcome to influence others to also follow their highest vibrational path? And she wants to know what the answer of that question would be, if possible.
It's a cart before the horse. We're talking about getting the answer before we even ask the question. So let's just start with the question. Leading edge is a unique mindset. Can we change that a little bit to relevant? We don't know if it's leading. We don't know if it's following. We don't know if it's on the edge, at the start, at the back, in the middle. We don't know where it is, and it's not relevant to know or to be leading. That's kind of a phrase that's used in scientific communities when they want to sell you something that's that makes your body explode. So let's look a little bit more deeply at that and instead ask, what is the most relevant question, not to serve or guide or influence someone else? What is the most relevant question to serve and guide and be an influence for myself? Now, you may call me selfish. Whatever it is, it is. So if you want to influence others, you don't do it with an answer. You do it by questioning yourself. And you question the subconscious. And these days, you're calling it different things. I think Candy likes to call it superconscious these days because that's very powerful and true. But whatever it is you're questioning, don't let the little mind get in the way. Don't let that portion of you say, I just want to influence someone else right now. What if your superconscious, your subconscious could influence you? Could influence your mind, your body, your lifestyle, your way of living so powerfully that when you ask yourself, everything you say and everything you do becomes another question for other people to find what's relevant, healthy, and powerful during these times. It's nothing you can say, but it's everything that you can show, and it's everything that you can ask, starting with you and then going forward into others.
Thank you. All right. Here we have Chris. Chris wants to know, is Dolores now advocating distance healing for quantum sessions?
I advocate what works. Now, you would have asked me this at any point in time. I would have said no. I would have said, no way. Statistics showing all of us otherwise. And you can't reason against something that's working. It's working. So don't try to recreate another wheel. You're jumping sometimes. Many humans are jumping from step to step to step. I got something that works. Let me get something better. I got something that works now. Oh, let me get something better. You aren't ready for better. You're ready for now. And it's working now.
Thank you. Here's a really interesting question from Elizabeth. Elizabeth wants to know, whoa, it just moved again. Here it is. Okay. Elizabeth wants to know, how do we shift energetic focus to stop thought and emotional spiraling around trauma and hurtful relationships?
So let's talk about those of you who have an inhaler in one hand and a cigarette in another. First of all, get rid of the cigarette, the toxins. And you'll say that that's a little bit of a backwards modality. Once you've done that, deal with the reasoning that you have for addiction to pain. There's a reason for that. That could be from a past lifetime. That could be from this lifetime. But what your brain is doing is spiraling in order to have more pain. It actually doesn't want to get rid of it. So you might want to ask your subconscious why it doesn't want to get rid of it.
Very good. All right. Let's see. Here's a question from Tiffany about background people. Happy earthy birthday, Dolores. What are your thoughts on background people? And if the two beings speaking of background people during your regression sessions were giving misinformation, what's I don't know, there's some interesting.
She went like this. She went,
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
She just totally popped me out of trance. And she went, no. Hold on, I got to get back into trance. That was hilarious. Give me a minute. She doesn't want to talk about other people's regressions. I heard that loud and clear. Let me get back. She got so upset.
Okay, I don't know what she's upset about. Maybe I read the question wrong. I don't know. All right, so I guess we'll skip that one. Sorry, Tiffany. I'm not sure.
No, you can ask about the first part of the question.
Okay. Well, maybe let's just start with the background people. What kind of, it continues to be a topic of interest. What can you say about the background people right now? There's another term for it I've heard used out there by people who are not in our community.
I didn't drop you out of trance. You dropped yourself because you don't want to talk about background people. She doesn't want to talk about it because she and I have opposing theories about the matter and have always, but it's not about accurate or inaccurate information. Many people have many storylines about this. Some believe in the theory that a being can come down and play the role in a body without the essence of a soul. Now, Pamela believes that is actually energetically impossible, and her theory is accurate. I believe that anybody can create any theory and make it possible because they're not awake. And when they're not awake, they have roles that they ask others to pretend to play. Now, there's your middle ground.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you so much. We have about 15 minutes left in the time together, just saying. Okay. Doro asks something about vibrational medicine. What is it? And how do you best learn about it or apply it at this point in time?
At this point in time, go back to understanding the basics. That your ego is very laser pointed. You're not meant to get rid of it. You're meant to use it. Point it in the right direction. It's a powerful tool. However, you've got this tool like a gun and you're going like this. That thing's loaded. So first of all, let's calm it down, point it in the right direction, and understand that we can put light inside of it, not bullets. Let's understand that the sound carries that light. You have resonance. Now, this is scientific theory, and this is something that really goes into the core of who you are. When you believe in his, you can gather this technology and use it very quickly. Why do you think you can bend spoons? Why do you think that you can start fires? Why do you think that you can have spontaneous lightning strikes and Pamela can make the wind blow things over? There's various things that many of you can do. You're just accessing an ancient technology that you're now remembering, but you're not quite believing it, much less being responsible or ethical enough in its usage when you access it. Imagine if some of the beings on your planet got a hold of that kind of power. That power is being taken from them because they must be ethical stewards of this planet. So now the ethical stewards of this planet, you, the volunteers, are remembering, but you're not quite ready to be stewards of it yet. Why? Not because you're unethical. It's because you're not quite great stewards of your own bodies and minds. That's happening now. That's the awakening that I want you to focus on. Then you will understand how to point this light that travels with sound and to find all the spaces between sound. Now, this isn't too far off. And many of your spiritual leaders and teachers and yogis and masters all around the planet, be it scientific or spiritual, you know these answers. And this isn't new to you, transcendental meditators. That's not new, the power of these technologies. But imagine if you could grow plants with it. Imagine when you can tap into water, like the Aboriginal beings and original Lemurians on this planet could tap into water just by smelling it and tapping with their feet on the land. Water springs up. They knew exactly where to dig for it. These will be easy things for you to remember. When we have a lot more time, we'll keep talking about it.
All right. I really like this question from Kat. She asks, "Hi, Dolores. How do you feel channeling in Pamela's body? Do you stop in the physical realm often, or is it too limited?"
I don't believe in the word limited. And we can say that everybody's body feels different. Every being's body feels different. And then this can be an incredibly ungrounded body, and she's working on it.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. So there's quite a few different questions. I might try to combine them, or there's just more questions about sound healing technologies. Even though you've said more is coming, people are still asking questions. They're asking questions about what kind, what should they study, what's appropriate, what should they practice. Even though I heard you say this is going to be coming and not possibly, from always from you, but it will be coming out. People are still asking about it. So can you expand on that a little bit more?
All of the technologies are wonderful, but you must understand how to use them and what's really happening. It's not the sound from the instruments, the singing bowls, the tuning forks, various array of tools that you use, from rife equipment to binaural beats and sound waves. It's the fact that your mind is pulling it forth from light, and it travels in a pointed razor focused manner. And it's this clear focus that is the tool. You're just pretending that it's in some other instrument. It's brilliant, but let's look deeper at the source. You don't need any of it. But for now, you play with it.
Thank you. Okay, here is a question from Kamari. I hope I'm saying that right. Will we get cleaner types of energy production in the short term as a result of this virus?
It's a result of nature. And the virus just happens to be the tool that you created to get back to where you wanted to go. How brilliant are you?
Excellent. Here is a question. Whoa. Well, I miss a word. Who wrote this question? I was just getting ready to ask. Give me a moment. Jumped on me. I don't know. There we go. I guess it's another question from Kat. It takes us off into another realm. Do the dolphins or whales have a message to assist us, or any new message, I might ask, if we're going to ask that question?
You've been studying them for a long time. Now, what's fascinating is neither of you grow bored of studying each other. They come to you as easily as you want to go with them. Perhaps their sound is pulling you into a certain resonance pattern, and your body and water is an interesting conduit for such experiment. Pay attention to that, the healings that happen in those waters. What if you could duplicate that sound yourselves? And what if you could do it with harnessing the technology of water?
Right. Very good. Okay. I'm not exactly sure if I understand this question, so let's give it a try. It's pretty interesting. It's from Barb, who says, I read in one of your books that what's going to happen on the earth plane is that its consciousness is going to awaken to its potential, and it will still not manifest its academic worth, its intellect. Are there more here now who have intention, inertia, motivation, direction, and a solidification of that knowledge so that all of it becomes real here and now?
Let's just look at the essence of your question. How could you not access your own intellect that you created for yourself? Wouldn't that be a little bit impossible? Because you created it and it's already here. So how could you not access it? You are that which you are seeking and asking about. You are not an intellect. You are aware that you are not an intellect, but that doesn't mean that you won't manifest it appropriately as a tool for consciousness. It works with consciousness. And consider that there is an intellect within essence. It's not the intellect in your mind. If you're talking about the intellect in your mind, you're spot on. But there's a greater essence of intellect that is within the mind of God consciousness. You can't not access what you are.
Thank you. All right. We're coming down to the last couple questions. Here's one from mutual friend, Carla Shepard. She wants to know, what is the best way to connect with BQH or QHHT clients at this time?
When you're coming together for a collective purpose, unlike any portion of history, this is a unique collective purpose. Understand the necessity of regression, not for the purposes of curiosity, but for the purposes of survival. That's a different thing. You're understanding connection and the need for connection and how important it has always been. Let's hope you never forget it. There's no best way as long as you continue to connect on all levels and help and support each other in forums, whether online, in meetings, online or off. Support each other. When you push other practitioners out of the picture, you may as well be separating you from you. That's no way to wake up.
Yeah, I can definitely tell you that when I get the most requests for sessions is when I've been referring the most other practitioners. It just builds on itself. Just the more you encourage that as a whole, the more it brings to yourself, which is, of course, what Worldwide Regression Week is all about. Pamela, I think this is going to be the last question to give you a few minutes to for you and Dolores to wrap up. This question is from Alex. I've been seeing and hearing male cardinals frequently lately. I feel like they have a message or meaning. I know you have a connection with cardinals and would like to know why they may be trying to tell us or what significance seeing a cardinal may be at this time from your perspective.
Let's think about the essence of red and its life-giving color when you think about blood. When you think about blood, oftentimes your mind immediately goes into primordial states of considering primitive life and death concepts. The birds themselves are beyond it. The color itself is beyond it. That color has been used for millions of years. It's one of the first colors when you discovered ink. Red and black. So let's look at that significance that you've made in your stories about that. You've got a male and a female. You've got polarities. Can't have one without the other. Can't have one aspect of God without another aspect of what you call God, source, the universe. And within this source connection, that is balance. Remember my word, connection. What most on the planet, and these birds bring that through the element of air, which is the quickest way for all of the essence of your subconscious from any realm to remember itself over and over and over again. So the string of consciousness, it's followed like dots along the way in constellations, or the way that a spider web weaves its web from string to string and connecting each line there. And when you look upon that in a different way, you understand polarity.
Thank you so much. Do you have any final words before leaving the channeling today, Dolores?
Remember that you all have roles to play, and there may be 7 different primary storylines that you're following and ways to get there. But again, all 7 roles are needed. Not one isn't.
Thank you, Dolores. We love you. Happy, happy birthday.
No, I don't put too much fuss over stuff like that. I love you.
Thank you. Can you please wake the channel?
Won't take much.
Welcome back.
Hey. Oh, hi.
Such big energy.
Mm-hmm. She was today. Awesome. It's been a while.
She was on her game. Beautiful channeling, Pamela. Thank you. There's a lot of really interesting information, especially about the roles, the transmitter, the transducer, the reporter, the recorder, the container. Some really interesting things. This was magnificent. Thank you.
Yeah. Text me when you get some time. I'd be happy to hear your thoughts on it and talk more.
I would love to do that. Few busy days coming up. We still are going on all the way into Saturday with our events this week, celebrating Dolores' birthday and Worldwide Regression Week. But thank you so much for having me join you today. Thank you to Priscilla for teeing this up. And all of you out there who stayed with us and asked such fabulous questions. I recognize many of your names with a lot of love.
Absolutely. Guys, you can find Candace at quantumhealers.com, and you know where to find me. So thanks again, Candace. You rock. I know that I just kind of threw this on you at the last minute. I'm so notorious for that. And please take my apologies and thank you.
No apologies. If it's got Dolores Cannon's name on it, I'm all over it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you guys later.